Hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on Neon Genesis Evangelion, episode 7. So, the last episode 6 may be one of my favorites. I really liked episode 6, and I think I liked episode 3. Episodes 3 and 6 are my favorites so far, but it was just such a great build-up episode to the battle. It was mainly about Shinji and Rei finding a connection, about Shinji realizing that there are other people that are like him that feel isolated and lonely and need to be wanted, and him trying to give Rei that same type of compassion and care that he wants for himself, even if he doesn't realize it. And we'll talk about that, but it was weird seeing episodes 5 and 6 be like a two-parter. It was really cool. We've talked about this in the comments, but this show, it doesn't make things obvious. And I really like that. This show is very subtle. It's very subtle. It's very nuanced. It doesn't just come out and say, this is a two-parter episode. It's like, no, you don't really realize it until you're halfway through the second part. And you're like, Rei too. Okay, this is all about her. But I do have a couple comments before we start. NL and Nicholas Bunt talked about this both. NL pointing out that several small studios have had their hands in making Neon Genesis. And I think that's really cool, is that this series that's an anime-only series, as you all have pointed out, kind of had influences from various studios. And it's cool to see those studios go on and be the big name animation companies that we know. It's really cool. So for example, NL pointed out that KyoAni, who I love KyoAni as an animation studio, they at the time were a small studio outsourcing work. And so they did the backgrounds for episode 5, which I thought was really cool. And the art director was Joji Uniguchi, which I was like, oh, that's so cool to know that Free and Violet Evergarden and Kiyobashi, the Dragon Maid, that series, like that big animation studio had a hand in creating Neon Genesis. And also that the storyboards for episodes 4 and 5 were by Junichi Sato of Sailor Moon. So I was like, oh, just lots of ties into Sailor Moon. I was like, that's interesting. It's funny how Sailor Moon influences a lot of different series and has a hand in several different things. It's really cool, but I really liked that. I thought that was really neat. And then Nicholas points out that Studio Ghibli actually apparently has done animation work for 2 of these episodes, but they didn't say which one. I'm like, thank you. I don't want to be spoiled. I don't want to know which one. He was like, you'll know when you see it. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure. I'm a huge Studio Ghibli fan. And I love Studio Ghibli's art style. So I'm like, that's really exciting. I'm like, oh, they did some episodes for this. Sweet. So I'm really excited when we get to those episodes. And hopefully I'll be able to point them out when we see them. But other comments, Megalobster45. Megalobster talking about Shinji helping Rei. And how I really liked this, Megalobster. I liked this idea that Shinji has been established as being isolated and lonely and depressed and doesn't really realize it himself, but sees those same things affecting Rei. And whether he realizes that he himself is exactly the same or not, he realizes that she's somebody that needs help. She needs a friend. She needs something. When she says she has nothing left for her, he's like, no, that's not true. And so I love that he reaches out with compassion to help her and to show her like, no, you're not alone. It's okay. And I really love that moment between him. That's why I picked it for the thumbnail, because it's a moment where Shinji, it's like one of the more compassionate moments we've seen him. And I like that Megalobster pointed out that whether or not Shinji realizes it himself, that he's struggling through the exact same thing, the fact that he recognizes someone else's pain and he relates to it. It's like, I love it. It's great. And then Christopher Peterson, I really liked this. The last episode was quote unquote competency porn. I love that term, competency porn, because it was like, we got 12 hours to do this. Let's hurry up and buckle down. The most efficient government service this side of 2015, right? 2016. Yeah, that they were so competent. It's kind of crazy, and it's such a commentary about how this system, Tokyo 3, these people are, when they're doing their job and saving Japan, they are highly efficient. They knew how to micromanage their time. They knew how to get all the resources together. They're like, we got this amount of time, let's do this. They were extremely efficient, and Misato was an incredible leader in that episode. It's just, when we're not at war, when we're not at battle, when we're not saving the country, these people don't know how to manage an everyday life. And it's fascinating, right? It's such a commentary, and I feel it ties to people who are veterans, perhaps. Like I know people that, they were in the military and then they come out and it's like, I've got to adjust to this sense of normalcy, but that's not normalcy to me. And so it's bringing up a whole host of concepts and ideas that relate to managing what we consider to be a normal life. What is that? And when we're not doing something that we feel competent in, that we've been trained, or that we feel compassionate to do so, and we're required to do something else, how does that affect us? And mentally, how does being in a scenario like this in episode 6, how does that affect us when we're not in that scenario? Because yeah, it's like Misato's pumped up on adrenaline, they're doing this, this, and this. And one thing I really like that Christopher Peterson pointed out, and I agree 100%, is that is the one thing. Like, there's so many movies now and so many series that it's all about the spectacle of the battle. It's all about the CGI, the spectacle. Like, look at all this destruction and everything. In episode 6, the battle was 30 seconds. They got the laser cannon. They fired it into the pyramid. Rey used the shield and sacrificed herself to try to help Shinji get the shot, but it was like a minute-long battle. That was it. It was not this high-tech, highfalutin, and that's kind of how these battles have really been in this series. It's the build-up. And what I love about last episode is that the build-up it makes the battle feel earned. Like, all these CGI spectacles and stuff, you don't feel anything. You're just like, oh, look, that guy's punching it through a building. Woo. You just don't feel anything. You don't feel that it's been earned. You don't feel that connection, the stakes, the connection to the characters. But in last episode, they spend the whole episode showing the stakes. They build it up. They show everybody's part in it. That's a group effort. And so when you get to that final battle and they win, it feels rewarding. You feel like you've earned that victory, even though it was a very short battle. It's like all the lead up is exhausting, and then you're like, oh, thank God they did it. So yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was really good. But yeah, last episode kind of just cut off. There wasn't any crazy cliffhanger for once. I feel like we're going into this next episode fresh. Surely it won't be bad, but it's going to be the aftermath. And they may just even skip to like 3 weeks later. They may not even show us the aftermath. I do want to know what's up with this angel. This angel's super mysterious. And everybody in the comments was like, it's my favorite angel. And I'm like, don't you spoil me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you spoil me. But everybody's like, and I get it. I love the design of it. It's very alien and mysterious and cold. Like, there's not any... It feels very non-human, which is interesting. It doesn't feel organic even. It feels like just like a pyramid, like a thing. So that's kind of cool. So I am excited and curious to know what's in the pyramid, what's in the box. So I'm curious if we'll actually get answers to that or not, or if they're going to make us wait and be mysterious about it. Wouldn't surprise me if they were, But this episode was really, really good, last episode. And I'm excited to dive into episode 7. We're officially, this will be like the 1/4 way through. So we're like a fourth of the way through the series, through the episodes. Like, there's 26 altogether. So at episode 7, we're like a fourth of the way through. It's like, okay, all right. We've set up our characters. We've set up what the angels kind of are. We know the conflict. We've set up Shinji and Rei's relationship, or at least what needs to be developed in their relationship, what the factors are with Gendo and Misato and Akagi. So I feel like we've gotten our main characters. I'm surprised at this point the cast is so small. I figured it'd be a big ensemble at this point. It's really not. It's not. There's Toji and Ida there, but it's not this big ensemble team to go fight the angels or fight the other mechs. It's just a very small cast. It's a lot more intimate than I thought it would be. But I like that. So I've talked enough. We're going to dive into this episode and just see what happens. So we're going to start episode 7 of Neon Genesis Evangelion here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What was this episode? Oh my god! Oh my god! I said I liked episodes 3 and 6, and they were really good, and they were really great stuff. This episode is my favorite so far. It combines so much, like the character development we've seen with Shinji and Misato and their relationship. Shinji has become, in this episode alone, especially with him and Toji and Ida, he's become so much more expressive as a character. Like, I've noticed that Shinji, since last episode, he's become more expressive. We get much more with him. The mystery, there's little nuggets set up that something's going down. What? Something's up. Something's up, getting into Misato's headspace. Like, there's just a bunch of stuff happening, and I'm like, okay, something. We get like a little bit of lore with the Evas, like just a little tease of something, and then Gendo is up to something too. getting stuff about this EVA unit. It's like, what? And we get like little sprinkles of the truth is not what it seems. Oh, this episode. This was my jam. I was all about this. I was like, okay, awesome. All about this. And so we need to break this episode down because what an episode. Again, favorite episode so far. Now, I have a thing about the rule of 8, but the rule of 8 usually applies to like 12 episode series, not 26 episode series. So I don't really think it covers. Maybe next episode will be really good, but I usually have like a rule of 8 when there's like a short series. But with this 7th episode is amazing. I love this. So we'll get past the OP here and just go here. Second impact. Oh my God. There's so much commentary, so much being discussed in this episode, and just, it was amazing. I was like, oh my God. I was just, there's so much to talk about. There's so much. Will Whiteboard Kun get filled up? I don't know. Maybe, we'll see. But okay, I did want to point out that I do think it's very funny, in the most interesting of ways, that the lead-in, the entrance into Nerve, is a pyramid like the angel. I thought that was very interesting. I was going to comment on it in the moment, but then we get into this very cryptic conversation with Gendo. So I'm going to put Gendo over here. Okay. We're going to put Gendo right here because there's something going on with him. He's been, I thought it was interesting the last few episodes that we get this development of Shinji and his relationship with Rei. And Rei's not talked about at all in this episode. We see her for like a brief moment, but she's not really present in this episode. But Gendo has had really no commentary or showing what he's thinking, seeing Shinji and Rei become closer, which is interesting. But they say, once again, I owe you. You're not going to pay me back in any way, are you? And saying about the materials they wanted under the Freedom. I was like, the Freedom of Information Act? I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's like the Freedom of Information Act. So someone owes Gendo, right? Or does Gendo owe somebody else? Someone is owed, and there's this Freedom of Information Act. Okay, so the materials they wanted. So somebody's trying to get a hold of materials. Okay. Trying to get a hold of that. All right. This was like, they just throw this in your face. Also, the boardroom that Gendo is in by himself has the Tree of Life on the roof of it, like the damn Sistine Chapel. What I love that this series does is the use of space as symbolism. It shows that most of these characters are isolated. They are isolated and they are separated off from the rest of society, and for better or worse, right? In the case of Misato and Akagi, it seems for the better because they're not part of the mob mentality, right? They're thinking things through in a different sense, and we'll get to that scene at the conference. But in Gendo's case, he's isolated and alone in this seeming pool of blood. We'll talk about that. But, and it's not necessarily framed as a good thing. So it's curious how this series chooses to use isolation and spatial awareness kind of as a means for us, the audience, to understand. Like in this scene alone, we are meant to understand that Gendo is the only one privy to this knowledge. Him and the person he's talking to. Like we as the audience are meant to pick that up, right? This is not just a random conversation about, we're not just talking shop about, what's happened during the day. This is some secret classified information that we're talking about. Okay. So then I wanted to get to this. I handled it by giving them some falsified data. Okay. So falsified data has been given. Okay. And it says first interim report concerning objects referred to as angels and the Human Instrumentality Project. So, okay. The top secret. So basically the information about the angels has been tampered with. Gee, that seems like it won't have any bad repercussions. And so let me go back to this. Okay, I'll skip there. Get back here. Why? Get back to this. All right. But yeah, it feels like, this surely won't go any, in any bad direction because of this, right? The government is quietly pursuing legal action. Okay. So the government is pursuing legal action. I'm guessing against Nerve, maybe? All right, is pursuing legal action, but that will be blocked any day now. Okay. But will be blocked. So I guess are they trying to get more information about the angels and Nerve just isn't giving it to them? So should I do something about that project as well? We don't know what that project is, but there's something going on. I want to tie it back to this conversation on the plane when we get to it. Something to that project. Okay, so no. Judging by the material you sent me, this should be no problem. Okay, so materials had been sent to Gendo. And Gendo says not to worry. Based on the materials, there should be no problem. Okay. Then I'll continue as planned. Okay, so that in the picture, I thought it was one of the EVA units. No, it's the jet air, whatever. The JA. We'll get to it. Okay, so the JA. So Gendo knew about it. Oh, so at the very end there, when we get to there, they said everything went according to plan except for Misato's actions. So they were intending for this thing to go rogue. They were intending for it to mess up. Because that just proves that the EVAs are necessary, right? Because we're going to talk about this, but the whole idea of the competition to save the world and everything. So this was all planned to get this thing out of the public eye as being a viable option. They're like, no, see how it messes up? See how, we'll talk about this when we get to that scene, but see how much of a danger this is? No, we need the EVAs. We don't need this. So, yeah, so Gendo knew, and he intended for a problem. And then Misato stepped in. So she has no clue. But Akagi's onto it. Akagi knows what's up. Oh, no. See, okay, so Akagi knows what's happening, but Misato doesn't. So this idea of I'm going to put this on here, of the EVAs, the pilots, and Misato, they're just pawns in whatever game Gendo and Akagi and them are involved in. They're just pawns in it. Ooh, yeah, I can see if Misato finds that out, that's not going to be good, and they're probably going to keep her from finding it out, but we'll talk about this, because there's some interesting things going on with Misato and Shinji and all of this, but continue as planned. Oh my god, that which is man-made. So the title, That Which Is Man-Made, the JA craft is man-made, right? It doesn't have a pilot in it. It's just an automatic thing. It's just got like an AI system. It's a mechanical being that just works on its own. It does not have a pilot or a human heart, right? That was established, and they consider that to be a good thing. And then Misato's like, no, this is why it's not good. And they talked about the unreliable heart. That whole scene, that conference scene, we're going to get to it, and it's amazing. But that which is man-made. The EVAs are not man-made. I don't believe so. I believe the EVAs are some kind of organic being that is not man-made. And Shinji kind of hints at it in this episode. It's crazy because when Shinji started talking about the EVAs, I'm like, oh, we're going to go into this. This is going to be a thing with the episode. No, he says like one line about it, like he's thinking about it. Has it in the back of his head. But then it's like, okay, here's this tiny little crumb, and it's like, I feel like I'm going to be talking about Attack on Titan with this series an awful lot, because I feel like Isayama takes a page from this. This series does this wonderful thing where it's just taking breadcrumbs and just sprinkling it on the ground, being like, here's some breadcrumbs of information. You might want to start eating these, gathering them all up. When you gather them all up, you might get something out of it. But it's the tiniest little thing, little tiny things that are starting to add up. And I feel like Isayama with Attack on Titan does the exact same thing. So I'm like, you've clearly taken a page from Neon Genesis. And it's impressive. I like it. But that which is man-made. Mm-hmm. So 3 times we get this whole breakfast scene, right? We get the breakfast scene 3 times, okay? We get the breakfast scene. Okay. With the breakfast with Shinji. And I like Shinji. Shinji, put some jam on that toast. Are rations harsh in Tokyo 3? Or is it wartime rations? You know, I know the second impact, but it's been 15 years. You think, I guess they haven't been able to grow any berries to make jam because he's eating just plain toast. Like, put some butter or something on that, or a piece of fish or something. Like, plain toast? No, thank you. Also, Shinji's 14 and drinking a cup of coffee. I love it. He's 14 and he's like, I'm drinking a cup of coffee. To be fair, though, I was drinking coffee when I was like 8. So not like all the time, but just like every now and then I'd have a cup of coffee. But so I get it, but it's just funny that Shinji's this 14-year-old kid and usually coffee is like something an adult drinks. And it's funny that he's doing it. But him and Pin getting in this routine of eating the fish and everything. And then Misato, honey. And again, talk about Misato a bit in this. I like Misato's character a lot. I like Misato's character because she's really flawed, and there's little things that you see about her character that you're like, and they kind of hit you the wrong way, but she's so charming in a way, and like, as being a slob, she's like, what if Sailor Moon, what if Usagi, which is funny because her voice actress is playing the same character, but it's like, what if Usagi was stuck in like a post-apocalyptic Japan and didn't have, magical girl powers? How would she be? I feel like this is how she would be. But I'm going to put Misato over here and kind of talk about her. So Misato has many qualities, one of which is that she's an alcoholic. I know I've like kind of said that in previous episodes, but she really is. And the show, the funny thing about the show is it kind of doesn't hit you over the head with that fact. It never directly calls it out. Shinji's not proud of her. He's just like, like he's not proud of her, but they never call her out and being like, oh, look, Misato's an alcoholic. But when she opens up the door there in her PJs, it's on the counter there. It's just beer. It's just liquor bottles and wine bottles. There's like nothing else to drink. That's why Shinji's probably drinking coffee. He's like, I don't have any other choice. There's no milk here, but she's clearly an alcoholic, and they never call it out, but it's just how she is. And I like the Shinji's just like, ugh. Like, she just comes in and he's like, And even Pin's like, And he's like, good morning. And then she starts her day with a beer. And Shinji is not impressed. And she just chugs it down. She tries to be all like, peppy about it. Like, oh, ha, 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 isn't this funny? She says, this is the way to start your morning. And Shinji's like, not with coffee? Like, he's kind of disappointed in her. He's kind of embarrassed. He's embarrassed for her. I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to put Shinji over here. Because I like the growth and development we get with Shinji in this. Shinji being embarrassed. Embarrassed for Misato. But he clearly cares for Misato. That's part of it. He doesn't want to be embarrassed for her. He wants her to like get a better image. He's like, why can't you just, clean up your act a little bit or something like that? But what I like about Shinji, he never comes out right and says it. He's just like, he's trying to be respectful, but you can tell he just has this disdain. So the first breakfast, we're going to talk about this. The first breakfast is Shinji is, put disappointed. Disappointed in Misato's behavior. And he's had to deal with it several times at this point. So he's like, not with coffee. And she's like, a traditional Japanese breakfast begins with rice, miso, and sake. And Shinji's like, I agree with the first two. He's like, that's your traditional breakfast. Like, I don't think anybody else does that. Yeah, he's like, you mean your. And she's like, what's that supposed to mean? And so when he says your, that's the only time that's really brought up. And she's like, what do you mean? What's that supposed to mean? Like, she's like, what are you saying about me? And it's like, well, he's saying that you're not being healthy at all, right? You're kind of shameless. And he says, who was supposed to cook this morning? And then she's like, And I like that we just get her, like, cut to her being like, so she was supposed to cook and she didn't. So he ended up making the fish for the penguin and the toast. And he's like, now I know why you're still single at your age, Miss Misato. so Shinji is aware. Yeah, so Shinji is aware of relationships, right? What he doesn't realize until Toji and Ida pointed out is that him and Misato do have a relationship, but it's not sexual, it's not romantic, it's family. Like, Misato has become like an aunt to him, or like a big sister or something. Like, there's just that type of relationship. So Misato has like a sibling or family relationship. I mean, she goes to his parent-teacher conference. Gendo, father of the year, can't go to his son's parent-teacher conference. They send Misato. We'll talk about that. But yeah, he's, you know, I feel like by the end of it, we'll talk at the end about that whole conversation, but Shinji just being like, come on, you should take better care of yourself. And he tries to, like, get her, and I love her eye twitching. She's like, you're just a kid. She's like, excuse me for being coarse. And he's like, and sloppy. And she's like, leave me alone. So yeah. So I like that she is an alcoholic. She is coarse and sloppy. She doesn't deny it. She does not deny that she's coarse and sloppy. And he's like, I'm done. So then this conversation, he says, are you really going to come to school today? So we're having this whole, so she's there for the parent-teacher conference, right? And I like how she sits in that chair. It reminded me, all I could think of is Yaroichi from Bleach, how she sits in that chair with her legs crossed like that, looking like a damn animal. Shinji very much is the more mature one in terms of like doing like domestic housework and things like that, which again, some of you commented that's a very interesting note with how like there's this hyper masculine, like people in this series tend to like want to push this hyper masculine thing onto Shinji where they're like, you should be a man and don't cry and man up, but he's the one doing all the housework and things like that. And Misato, on the other hand, kind of has the more stereotypical like masculine role in there. Like, she doesn't make the food for breakfast. She shows up, cracks open a beer. Like, it's very, with the stereotypical like guy after work when he gets home and cracks open beer and doesn't do anything and is a slob, it's designated to Misato, who's the woman. And Shinji, who's the male in the house, is the one doing all the housework and cleaning up and everything. So there's this really interesting, for the 90s, concept of gender roles taking place. And Shinji's also the younger one, and how they've been reversed in this situation. It's interesting. But yeah, in this conversation, she's like, it's your parent-teacher meeting after all. And he's like, but you're so busy with work. And she says, don't worry. And she slips up. She says, this is part of my job too. So she says it's part of her job. And Shinji notices. So back several episodes ago, Misato, we talked about how it's probably her job to watch over Shinji. I do think Misato genuinely likes Shinji, and she genuinely feels for him and wants to be like a positive presence for him, because she senses that isolation that he's suffering through. But at the end of the day, it is her job. I'm assuming Gendo has told her to watch over him, make sure he doesn't run away, make sure he stays with nerve, make sure he's okay, that he's mentally fit to be in this EVA unit. And she's like, that's my job. And so like in episode 2, when she comments, she's like, maybe I'm being too cheery about this. Like, she's like, I know why I'm here and what my role is, but I feel like she's become kind of domesticated and gotten attached to Shinji at the same time, right? Because when she says that, Shinji pauses and he's like, part of your job. And then she's like, So yeah, Shinji notices that. That's such a good scene. And it's so, they don't linger on it. That's the thing this series does. It doesn't linger on anything. It just leaves you as the audience being like, yep, he knows that now. Okay. That's the one thing I love about this show, is that they don't linger on anything, but it's known. So I feel like now that Shinji knows that, it's going to come up later. But, you know, so many series that you watch, they'd have Shinji go through, like, as he's walking to school, he'd have this internal monologue about it, being like, what did she mean it was part of her job? I wonder what these things are. No, this series doesn't do that. It just points it out there. Misato has that look like, shit, I slipped up. Shouldn't have said that. Now Shinji knows, or he has inklings about it, and then they move on. That's all we need to know. I love it. Ain't got time for that. And she's like, yes. And then he says, oh, thanks for coming all this way. Yes, just wait a minute. Okay. So she's on the phone. And he's like, and I love that Shinji has a blush. She's like, please don't go out like that. Because at this point, she's in the bath towel, right? He's like, please don't let my friends see you in the bath towel. They'll never stop teasing me about it. Like, Shinji's just so blushy about it. And she's like, what are you talking about? Oh, because she's not in her bathrobe yet. And she's like, oh, it's okay. And she, like, pushes up, like, her cleavage and everything. And Shinji's like, ugh. So that's the thing. Shinji, and he just turns away. Shinji is not oblivious. Right? Shinji is sexually aware. Right? He is aware of his surroundings, which from the start of the series, you wouldn't think that, but going through these last couple episodes, yeah, Shinji is aware. He's just not a horny teenage kid. He's just like, he knows that these things are there, but he's just like, whatever. And it's because she's like family to him. He can't view her like that because he's like, no, you're a slob. No, I don't feel that way about you. So it's funny. It's like very much like a big brother, little sister sort of thing. And then of course, Toji and Ida show up, and I love the stereotypical Toji has the bag on his head like so many anime characters do. I'm like, dude, would your neck not be straining? How, I don't know. I'm old enough to be like, I don't want to strain my neck like that. But I just love that and Shinji's like, no, leave her alone. Don't come in. And she is kind enough to wave and be like, no, it's fine. She is kind enough to be like, see ya. And I love that they're crying like, we just got to see a bare moment of her. And Shinji's like, let's get going. Quit oogling. Oh my God. I love that. It's very much like if you have a sibling and their friends come over to see the other sibling and you're like, get out, leave my sister alone. Like, it just feels like one of those moments. It's great. I also love that Misato can do the Rin from Free, can do the one-handed beer opening. Talent, y'all. Talent. Sarcasm. That sarcasm thing. So we establish, again, imagery, symbolism. We have down here where they are fixing the road where things have taken place at. But again, we cut back from episode 2. In episode 2, we saw where Shinji was like, there was a group of students walking and Shinji was isolated by himself away from all of them. Now, Shinji is walking with Toji and Ida. So there is that difference. And so, again, she says on the phone, Misato says, well, I guess it's good that he's loosening up and expressing himself more. Yeah, Shinji is much more expressive. And I feel like it's because he's around these people. He's not by himself. He's not isolated. He's around others. And so he is becoming more expressive. He's like loosening up. He's letting his actual personality come out. I mean, compared to episode 1 when he was so shut off and reclusive, now he's like starting to like around his friends, like ease up and have more personality. I like it. I like Shinji having, being able to express himself more. I'm all for it. And he looks happy there walking with his friends. I'm like, I love seeing Shinji not be like depressed and gloomy. Like he's happy walking with these people he cares about. I'm like, yes, please. Even when they're teasing him. And then Misato saying, yes, he just left. I'll leave guarding him from here to you. Okay. So that's interesting because we don't actually see who's watching Shinji. Okay, so Misato, she is guarding Shinji, but someone else is as well. Okay. And we don't know who the someone else is. Okay? Because she guards him and then she says, I'll leave guarding him from here to you. Okay. So we don't know who that someone else is. Somebody else is watching Shinji when Misato can't. So Shinji has eyes on him at all times. That's not creepy at all. Speaking of not creepy at all, we have the pyramid that's still stuck in the middle of the city and has the giant blaster through it. But it looks like When you see the stuff coming out of it, it looks like blood. It looks like it has like the red coming down it. It looks like blood. And it's not blue. It's not blue. Okay. Oh, okay. So we have the angel, the pyramid angel, okay? Everybody on YouTube has drawn it like a diamond. Like a pyramid or a diamond. Okay. Here's the thing. It has red blood. What? The first angel, the one that looked like Spirited Away, it had blue blood. This does not. This is different. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's the tiniest little detail. And it cuts from that moment there to Shinji looking at it. Everybody else, nobody's paying attention to this giant angel corpse that's just sitting in the middle of town. Nobody cares. We just see it every day. But Shinji's looking at it, right? And you can imagine Shinji's just been like, thinking about that battle with him and Rei. But then he gets distracted. Misato, my girl. God, it's this whole idea of how Misato projects herself. Her projection as cool and competent. She is very good at projecting an image of herself, right? Even if it's not real. Because she zooms into that car, slides in, again, there's this just like kind of, I don't want to label it as masculine, but when you think of like the cool characters like sliding in the car, it's very rare, I feel, to see a female character like coming in the sports car and zooming into the space and parking. And just, I think of Fooly Cooley maybe with the main character with Haruna with the motorcycle and everything. I think of maybe her. But other than her, and maybe Sailor Uranus, who is Shinji's voice actor playing it. Other than that, you don't really see like a female character like being all really cool and badass in a car like that. Or at least I haven't seen that in other series. I'm sure there are, but I just love and Misato coming out, and of course, Ida has the damn camcorder. Like, I'm like, oh, there is a creepy implication with this that Ida is taking footage of Misato. He's a teenage boy. Like, I can't imagine what he's going to do with that footage later. He's probably going to archive it in a library in a safe space where the public can view it. I can't imagine what this 14-year-old boy is going to do with footage of Misato walking by in this hot attire. Can't possibly imagine. She's arrived. And girl dressing for the damn parent-teacher conference. What? The jacket, the low-cut blouse, the mini skirt, the earrings and everything, like, girl. And every guy is like hanging out the window. Cool, who is she? Like, she shows up in the red sports car, like with the hot attire. He's got a babe like that for a guardian. And I love that every girl just looks annoyed. And Ray's just sitting there like, don't care. Ray's just not concerned. Ray's like, whatevers. But the other girls look annoyed. I love it. They're such dorks. When Misato wants to dress up, girls got fashion, right? And yeah, Misato is really awesome. And yeah, she just gives him like the peace sign, everything. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to play a crowd, which is funny, right? When she's in control of the situation, she knows how to play it, right? And I love that they're like, she's so cool. And Shinji's like, oh, you think so? And like, it's even more amazing that she is Nerve's ops director. So yeah, I mean, Misato on the outside to the public, other than Shinji, seems like she's beautiful. She drives the fancy car. She seems extremely competent. She's a director for the giant secret government operation. Like, on paper, she seems like she's got it all. But then when Shinji sees that at home, she's a hot mess. And he's like, no. And he comments about it here. Because and he's like, oh, you think so? And they're like, good thing that Shinji's such a baby, Kensuke. It's just a counseling session, but my mother had to dress up. Oh, okay. So they did have to dress up for this meeting. And then they say, Shinji's no rival for us. Yeah, you guys don't know what a slob she is. So yeah, the friends are like, well, Shinji's not interested in Misato, so he's not a problem. But Shinji's like, you guys don't know how she really is behind closed doors. Like, she's not what she seems. Right? And Shinji's like, you guys don't know. And then Toji's like, I wish I had a girlfriend like her. And I like Shinji's like, I bet you'd have a tough time. Again, Shinji is so sarcastic and dry. I love that more of Shinji's personality is coming out as the series goes on. It's great. Oh. And they're like, you just don't get it, do you, Mr. Big Shot? And so they're like, and Shinji's like, wait, what? He's like, we'll leave protecting Earth to you. And so you leave Miss Misato to us. And Shinji's like, ugh. So that's where we're at. His friends are like, you protect Earth, and we'll get Misato. Okay. But I love that friendship that's developed between them. It's really great. But we can't have those shenanigans forever. We got to go back to the task with the EVA. Unit 1 has achieved the requiring cooling level. Okay. And so please shift operations to stage 2. Okay, I feel like episodes 1 through 6 for stage 1. We're leaving stage 1. Now, I feel like this episode, we talked about how you set everything up with your characters. So the first act is done. We've set everything up with the characters, with what they are, how things are dealt with, etc. And now we're moving into act 2. And I feel like stage 2 is what they're calling it, right? So we're entering with the EVAs, stage 2. Okay. With the EVA units. All right. And that's when Shinji has this thing, protecting the Earth. That's what the EVA is for. Yeah, and we go back to episode 2 with the Beast. With the Beast, like all this stuff. Like, what the hell is it? Something's not right. It just looks so creepy. It looks like a damn narwhal, like a beluga whale with teeth. And that eye. So Shinji talks about how the EVA is for protecting Earth. And that kind of gets like the whole Eve thing, like Eve, Mother Nature, Earth, like the idea of like creation and being like this maternal quality, like, you know, mothers protect their children. So it's like, okay, is the EVA unit meant to protect its children of Earth? Like, what does that represent? Like, it just feels like that's the EVA's job, is to protect the Earth because it's filled with their children, you know? But then come to think of it, what is the EVA? Yeah, I'm glad Shinji's asking this question. Like, what is it? What is the EVA? Yeah, I'm glad that Shinji's asking these questions. And then he points out something really crazy. He's thinking that the entry plug smells like blood. Yeah, so it is flesh and blood. It is organic. That whole entry plug thing, yeah, you're being inserted into the brain of this creature that is alive. I'm like, yeah, it smells like blood. But I feel so relaxed here. Why? So, okay. It's something that's morbid, but relaxing. So why? Yeah, why is it like that? And I don't, that's a really good question. I feel relaxed here. Why is that? I don't know, right? Because he's basically being inserted into the brain of whatever this thing is and controlling it from there. Like, it's been, you know, as nerve is, he's like in the nervous system of this creature and controlling it from there. Why would he feel relaxed, right? I feel like with the religious symbolism, a part of me would think it would have something to do with like a womb, or like you're inside the womb of something, like, you know, a child inside the womb of a mother or something like that. But this is not the womb, it's the brain. So it doesn't make sense, right? But there is a reason, like there's some kind of connection. And we've established from episode 1 that Shinji has a connection to the EVA, specifically Unit 1, because it reached out to protect him. It reached out its hand to protect him, even though he'd never been inside of it before. It has a connection with him. But why is that? and what's going on with that. So that's the big questions that it asks. And again, when Shinji's asking these questions at the start of the episode, I'm like, oh, well, we're going to spend the rest of the episode figuring that out. Nope. Nope. Just asks that question, and he says, in the end, I don't know anything. And I love that look from Shinji, okay? That look that he says, I don't know anything. Okay. I don't know anything. And I want to take a picture of, we have our two people there alongside Akagi and Misato. But Shinji, he's like the tiny little person off the side. And he's always reading, like, when in episode 1, when he went to the original lab to see the Eva 1 unit, he was reading the manual, right? Trying to figure everything out. And here he's reading, getting debriefed again. But Shinji's thing is he's very good at just eavesdropping and listening to the situation, but even though he's acting like he's not involved or invested in the conversation. So Shinji's like, I don't know anything. So I feel like that is a setup of Shinji being like, I want to know more. I need to learn more. I need to figure out what's going on. And that's going to be one of Shinji's things, one of Shinji's goals throughout this, leading into the rest of this series, is I need to figure out what to do and what's going on with these EVA units. I feel like this episode has started to establish some of the mystery behind the EVAs and what's going on with these projects that Gendo's involved in, and Shinji has a curiosity. He wants to know what's up. So I feel like part 2, the second stage of this, is going to be Shinji starting to question about the EVAs, what's up with them, and trying to gain knowledge. I'm like, okay. Which I'm all for, because if Shinji's our protagonist, we're going to learn alongside Shinji, and I want to know. I don't want to be spoiled, obviously, but I want to know. So this series, again, does a habit of just giving bits of information, like just casually, just like throwing the crumbs down. So what is the status of Unit 00's bio-chest components? It was seriously damaged. So we'll make a new one, but it'll barely fit with our supplementary budget. Okay, so we're going to establish here that with Nerve, they're offering under a budget that is limited. So clearly, Ray's unit has sustained a lot of damage, and so they need to fix it first. So that's why Ray was not involved in the whole thing at the very end of this episode. Ray was completely left out because her EV unit is trashed, right? So they've got to fix it first. But they're operating under a limited budget. They don't have a lot of money, so it'll barely fit to make a new one. So it would make sense for Gendo and them to sabotage the JA unit, being like, oh, don't give them funding. We need more funding to save the Earth, remember? Remember how we need that funding more than these guys? Yeah, we do. So give us the money, not them. So the idea of them sabotaging the JA whole situation, okay, makes a lot more sense now. Yeah. Will our job get any simpler once we get the Unit 2 from Germany? Okay, so then we established that the Redheads unit, Unit 2, is coming from Germany. Okay. So Unit 2 is coming from Germany. All right, it's not here yet. Interesting. All right. It could go the other way. Yeah, I have a feeling the more units y'all get to maintain, the harder your job is going to get. Your job is about to get far more complicated than you probably imagined. Mm-hmm. Disposing of the angel on the surface isn't cheap, is it? This place is really tight when it comes to money. Yeah, so, this series doesn't shy away from the fact that it ain't cheap to save the world in this capitalist economy, right? That saving the world involves economy, which is the craziest thing, right? It's the craziest thing. This thing is a hindrance to life itself, but we got to have the money to help protect the people of the world. Isn't that funny? Isn't that something? God. This series makes such like it's not really even satire. It's just it is a satire in a way of just how ridiculous the system is of protecting people in this world. And it's very much a reflection of our own world. It's really, really good. I like it. I like how highbrow it is. We're talking about the fate of mankind here. Exactly. It can't be helped. So yeah, they established, they're like, well, this is stupid. What is money when it comes to saving the people of the earth? And they're like, well, that's just how it is. It's great. Man cannot live by Eva alone. That line. Okay. So establish. All right. Man cannot live by Eva alone. I feel like there's multiple meanings with that, even though the obvious meaning is that the world can't just rely on the Eva units to save them. That seems like the surface level obvious thing that it means. But anytime that this series focuses so much on isolation and loneliness, that I feel like a part of its message is that we as people, we as humans, we can't just be alone. That's not conducive to a healthy development or a healthy relationship with anything, right? We need to be around each other. Again, Attack on Titan, we're pack animals, right? All those survivors need money to live too. So then that brings up the big thing. It's like, okay, well, we have our budget, but do we give money to the military, or do we give it to the people? That's the big conundrum, because it's like they need money to give to the people so that they don't starve and die, but then they need money to give to the military to protect the people so they don't die. So it's interesting. They're like budgets. So is the commander off to another conference? Yes, he's on a plane now. All right, where Gendo is. It's nice and quiet around here when he's not around. Yeah, when he's not around, it's quiet. He's not stirring up stuff. So yeah, the UN, the 797, the UN plane. Again, we talk about isolation. We talk about loneliness. Gendo is on the plane by himself. Gendo is all alone until this other guy comes in. And he's like, since we're sharing the flight, do you mind if I sit here? I like that implies that originally Gendo was just expecting to sit by himself on the plane when there's clearly someone else there that he could talk to. He actively chooses to not be around them. That speaks volumes for his character, in that he's like, no, I don't really want to be by anybody. And it's like, And he doesn't answer either. He doesn't answer. The guy's like, oh, do you care if I sit with you? And he just, one of those, I guess, situations. So the revised budget for the sample collection passed quite easily. Okay, so getting back to this, there was a revised budget for samples, which I'm assuming is the angels. So like, we'll get you sample information about the angels, which they've tampered with, as they established. And so they said the committee's main concern is survival. So in the end, survival is the key. So, and that ties back to what NERV is doing. They want to establish that the only way for them to survive is using the EVAs. That's the only way we're going to survive, is if we use the EVAs. And so as long as they are key to that, then they're going to keep getting money. But if something else like this comes along that would hinder Eva's usefulness or importance, then that's going to be a problem. They aren't going to get the money. So, okay. And I like that they're having this conversation while this guy's like talking. Again, they animate the guy talking on TV, even though we can't hear what he's saying. The commitment and the animation of this series is great. They aren't stingy when their own lives are at stake. Yeah, they'll throw money to protect themselves. After all, the basis of their argument was that no more angels would appear. So, okay. So the government basically is establishing, as long as there are angels appearing, we'll need the... That's the other thing, too. The timing of all this is suspicious, right? Because they've gone for 15 years without worrying about... Okay, so wait. If Misato's 28, then 14 years ago, she would have been 14, right? Right? So, so if around the time that the angels first showed up, Misato would have been about the right age for a pilot of one of these Evas, right? Okay. They're just going to file that away. But the government's like, well, we didn't really need the Evas because there weren't any angels. I'm wondering if Gendo and them are partially responsible for the angels even showing up. Because if the government's giving them money based on the fact that there are angels to begin with, they seem like they're prepared for like these angels to pop out of nowhere. So I'm wondering if they're partially responsible for the angels showing up to begin with. If that's even a thing. Again, there's stuff set up in this episode that I'm like, if Misato and Shinji find out about this, they're going to be pissed. Like, this is really going to upset them because you're just basically, if Gendo and Akagi and them are putting people's lives in jeopardy just to keep the funding for their projects going, that's interesting. All members of the UN except the US have approved budget for the EVA Unit 6. So I'm like, there's a couple things from this. One, we've established that we have unit 00, 01, and 02 that are coming to NERV and they're real. Where the hell is unit 03, 04, and 05? Where are they? We don't know. They don't mention them. They don't mention units 3, 4, and 5. But we mention unit 6, that there's a budget approved. Okay. Well, we don't know about these 3. What are they? But this budget is approved for Unit 6. Everybody except the U.S. Surprising no one. What, the U.S. being, against something that everybody else is for? Never heard of it. It's probably just a matter of time for the U.S. as well. That country is allergic to unemployment, after all. God. This was made in 97? Fun times. Nice references to historical things, right? Mm-hmm. This guy looks shady. I don't know. This dude looks super shady. The guy with the liquor bottle. His eyes look shifty. And I want to notice that Gendo doesn't really even look at him. Gendo is not looking at him during this whole thing. He's looking out the window. I think that that's like a symbolic thing too, that Gendo doesn't really care for this guy. He doesn't want anything to do with him, but he knows it's a necessity to interact with him, so he doesn't mind it, but he also doesn't care. He's like, I don't really want to talk to you. And so he's like, what about your country? So this guy's from a different country. He's not from Japan. We'll participate beginning with the construction of Unit 8. So we get Unit 8 established. 07? Never heard of it. But Unit 8, this guy and his country is building it. So all these different countries are building the units. Funny that. They're building the units because like Unit 2 is coming from Germany. So they're building all these different units to send to Japan to fight the angels. Interesting. Okay. And plans for the second installation project are still viable. So whatever this second installation, I feel like the notes that I'm taking, I'm going to have to come back to these because I feel like it's going to come out in the wash later, like what all these things are referring to. It's just like an exposition dump. They're just like, here's all these things you don't know about yet, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you all about them, and then you'll remember them for later. So there is a problem with it not having yet found a pilot. So they're missing a pilot. Okay. The angels have appeared once again. We have no choice but to defeat them. Now, here's the thing. Gendo says that. He says we have no choice but to defeat them, but we don't see his eyes. Anytime an anime doesn't show you a character's eyes, it means they're hiding something. So Gendo is not being entirely truthful. He says there's no choice but to defeat the angels. as he has his mysterious glasses that are fogged up and we can't see what his actual eyes look like. And he's like, we don't want another second impact either. And then, God, so as they're flying over, it's so cool. The jet plane, as they're flying over, you see Antarctica, and it's just this red mass, this black hole with the red in the middle of it. Okay. So about that second impact. The second impact, it's not really the second impact. It ain't a meteor. So the second impact that evaporated Antarctica was not a meteor. Yeah, the history books. There's like Martin Luther King Jr. in there, which is, it looks like Martin Luther King Jr. in there. The history texts say it was a disaster caused by a huge meteorite. However, but sometimes the truth has been covered up. 15 years ago at the South Pole, mankind discovered the humanoid being known as the first angel. Okay, so 15 years ago, the first angel appeared at the South Pole. Now, as Akagi is telling Shinji this, Shinji is listening to Akagi and watching her. He does not notice Misato. Misato is looking off to the side and looks very guilty, looks very nervous, angry, and saying, however, in the middle of it. So again, that ties back to my whole theory about the pilot thing. Misato would have been around 14 or 15 when this occurred. So if that were the case, if she were around the age of a pilot, did she try to fight the first angel and it all go awry? Was Misato one of the first pilots and she tried to face the angel and it didn't work? And that's why the explosion happened? Maybe. Possibly. I don't want my theories confirmed or deconfirmed yet. In the middle of the investigation, for reasons unknown, there was a huge explosion. And I love that as they say explosion, Misato's hair blows back. So in the midst of everything, there was an explosion. Like a nuclear blast that evaporated the poles, the South Pole. That's the real truth behind the second impact. And he's like, Shinji's like, so then what we're doing here is to prevent a third impact from happening. So, yeah, Akagi's like, look, these angels caused the second impact, this big explosion that ravaged the entire world. We don't want that to happen again. We're trying to prevent that. Seems legit. That is the purpose of Nerve and the Evangelions. And I like that they do these weird cuts, like really quickly. Like they cut really quickly to Misato holding the notebook, like her gripping it. Like they cut that back to that really quickly. It was interesting. Yeah. And then that's when Akagi looks over and sees the file E0080. Okay. And so, by the way, the event will occur tomorrow as scheduled. So, the event as scheduled. We'll get to that old event there. The event as scheduled. Okay. Yeah, and Misato just doesn't look happy about it. She's like, she doesn't look happy. And so, I feel like Akagi... Again, I don't think at this point, I'm rewatching the episode, so I may change my mind. I don't think at this point that Misato knew that the JA unit was going to go awry. I don't think Misato knew that. I think Akagi knew that. I think Akagi knew everything was going to mess up. I think Akagi knew exactly what was going to happen. But I don't think that Misato knew. I don't think she was aware. So, which is interesting, right? I don't think Misato was aware that that was going to happen. But I think that I do believe Akagi knew. So as far as Misato understands, the event as scheduled is that conference. It's the conference that they both go to that Misato's like, we're about to go deal with these idiots that are going to trash talk us in front of the public. So, okay, like she's just clearly not happy about it. And she says, I understand. So again, I don't know if Misato, by the end of the episode, I think I'll know better if Misato knew that this incident with this was going to happen or not. But again, it's a new day. Day 2, got the toast. Shinji and Pin eat the same thing again. as normal, but then they look over and see her, and Misato has a completely different vibe. A completely different vibe. So the second time we have breakfast, Misato looks like she's going to a damn funeral. She's dressed up, not happy. It's a totally different vibe. Like she's ready to go to work, right? And I'm just gonna point it out. The little pendant she has in the middle of her suit, it looks like the diamond, like the pyramid angel they just defeated. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing it out there. It's interesting. It's curious. The turquoise. And I like the Pinpin's like, oh, and Shinji's like, oh, you're actually put together. He even drops the fish. And she's like, good morning. And Shinji's like, good morning. But he seems kind of like, oh, why are you all dressed up? And she's like, I'm going to Old Tokyo on business. So I'll probably be back late tonight. So I have delivery for dinner. So get takeout. Okay. And she's like, later. And she's like a totally different person. She's not happy to be going on this mission. And Shinji looks so sad. He's like, I kind of miss your slobby, coarse self. He's like, okay. It's curious, right? A human work. Okay. So the abandoned zone 28, the center of Old Tokyo, and Tokyo is completely flooded. Like the original Tokyo is just all underwater, this abandoned zone. Right? And so they have this nerve unit like flying over there, and it's Akagi and Misato. And Misato's saying it's hard to believe this used to be the flourishing capital of Tokyo. And then Akagi's like, we're here. Of all places, they didn't have to hold it here. Saying like, why bring it back here to the center of the... Because yeah, they were probably old enough. I mean, they were probably 14 when the second impact happened. So they're old enough to remember what Tokyo was like before it. Like what their home was like. So having this conference, everything back here is probably like reminiscent. It's very nostalgic. But again, when she says of all places, they didn't have to hold it here. So does Misato know? Does Misato know about the hijack? About the JA mishap that's about to happen? Because she's like, of all events, why host it in... But again, it's all so convenient because they're hosting this demonstration in this abandoned part of Tokyo, this abandoned part of Japan, so there's not any danger to the citizens. So if things did go awry and there was like a nuclear... But then they would have been caught up in it. Like, what the hell? But I guess if things really, truly went badly, then it would be, it'd be like a nuclear explosion in the center of Tokyo, but there's nobody there. So, except for the dignitaries and the people for the launch. So, interesting. So, is the SSDF involved in this project? The Strategic Self-Defense Force? No, they're not allowed to interfere. Okay. So... Akagi establishes that the SSDF is not involved. But we know they kind of were, right? We know they kind of tampered with things, right? They kind of tampered with things. So yeah, they weren't allowed to interfere, but they already interfered. That's the thing. And so yeah, no wonder they're doing as they please. And then they launch down there, and there's all the helicopters, all the different... I love that there's all the different helicopters, all the different aircrafts. It's like every country, all these dignitaries have come. Celebrating the JA completion announcement commemoration. Interesting. So yeah, and they have this sake with like the McDonald's logo on it, and it says the malt beer and everything. Nerve party. So, okay. So it's funny. The nerve party is like they have at the center of the table like each representative of who's showing up to represent each party. The nerve party, the only representatives are Akagi and Misato. That is the most obvious symbolism of that giant table, that enormous table with the sake in the middle, and there's two people. It's like the most isolated table. Again, establishing that at Nerve and everything, they're all isolated. There's so many people that are just by themselves. They're not part of the group, right? They're not part of society. They're branched off from it. And so we at Japan Heavy Chemical Industries are proud of. Okay. But it's so funny because then you see the dignitaries at all the other tables, right? You see all the other tables. There's food, there's drinks, there's a centerpiece, there's all these beautiful, elaborate things on there, and everybody's like congregating and mingling and talking to one another. The nerve table is at the center, and there's just Akagi and Misato. Like, no food, no centerpiece, just a bunch of bottles of sake. That's it. Like, no mingling. Nobody is hanging out with them. They're so isolated. And I love that there's like the 6. It almost looks like a symbol there where it's like them in the middle, and then there's the 6 all around them. What? Oh my God. You'll be observing the official demonstration from the control room. Okay. And we'll be taking your questions here. Yeah. And the famous Dr. Ritsuko Akagi. So this dude here, he's a little bit he's so condescending to her, but he's like the famous Dr. Ritsuko Akagi. Like, all right, what do you have a question about? And so it is our honor to have you here. Like, just talking her up, just like, pouring on the fake charm, right? Because he's about to like tell her off here in a second. I feel like I'm going to flip this over, but I don't want to, so I'm going to have to erase part of it. And she's like, may I ask a question? And he's like, of course, certainly. According to our earlier briefing, the unit is equipped with an internal nuclear reactor. So this whole thing about an internal nuclear reactor. No, that's a bad idea. Why? But they establish why. Yes, this is one of our project's most distinguished features. 150 days of consecutive operating power is assured. So get the whole JA unit here. The JA unit is established to have 150 days of power. That seems unnecessary. We established back in like last episode that it really just takes a minute to destroy these angels as long as you have the right equipment, the right aim, and everything's set up. Like the strategy is there. It took them 1 minute to fight this angel if they just had everything in place, right? As long as they figured out what to do, it took like a hot minute. Why do you need 150 days of consecutive power? That's half a year. No. Yeah, okay. And then from a safety perspective, Akagi's like, isn't incorporating a nuclear reactor into a weapon designed for hand-to-hand combat risky? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's like, well, it's better than a weapon that won't work for over 5 minutes. So, God, but that's the thing. It can work for over 5 minutes. It's just if it gets unplugged, right? But there's this idea being put forth of control versus independence, which is fascinating, right? Because the thing with the EVA units is that they are powerful, but they are very much in a controlled environment. They have the umbilical cord attached to them. They have like a power reserve, but it's limited, it's finite. They can do so many things as long as they are connected with the nerve system, right? As long as nerve is connected to the EVA unit, it can do all these things. But when it's by itself or unconnected, then it kind of goes haywire and it's wild. This thing, they're like, oh, it can operate on its own. It's fine. It's automated. I'm like, and that ends up being, it's proven to be like a bad idea. And he's so casual dissing her, being like, oh, we'll do this. And she's like, but in an emergency situation, there could be problems with remote control. She's like, but I've been working with these EVA units. If there's an emergency and you lose control, the idea of a walking nuclear reactor that you can't turn off is a problem. And he doesn't see it that way. Right? And then I love that Misato's just sitting there with her hat, like chewing on her stick, like, oh, this is stupid. This is pointless. Why are we doing this? And he says it's still more humane than a system that induces great mental stress and causes mental instability. So their whole idea is the idea of, it's funny, there's this weird dynamic of, it's this weird contrast, right? Because, yeah, the EVA's units are all about being controlled, but they're run by a human, which in itself would seem like a human in itself would have free will and independence, but in the case of the EVAs, it does not. But then you have the JA unit, which has this independence, but is completely stripped of its humanity. So that's interesting. It's a weird contrast. You would think the independence would go with humanity and the control would go with robotics, but it's reversed. It's interesting. And he does make a good point. He's like, yeah, we've seen from Shinji and Rei, these pilots go through a lot of mental stress and instability piloting these EVA units. That's a big problem. We see that firsthand, right? And I love that Misato's just sitting there like, cut it out. This just makes you look childish. Misato's like, there's no point arguing with him. Like, just let him go. You're just going to end up being on the wrong end of the stick with this. But Akagi cannot. Akagi says there's still the issue of manual control. And he says, I believe that it's safer than a most dangerous weapon. With the top secret that can go out of control and run wild. And so they say a weapon that cannot be controlled is utter nonsense. And they have the top secret picture of the EVA 1 unit going berserk. Of course they'd have a picture of it, right? So they establish that information has been leaked, but we as the audience find out that it was leaked on purpose. That stuff has been tampered with, things have been released, like there's stuff that's leaked out on purpose. And it's like, oh my God. But yeah, this guy's like, no, it's like a woman in hysterics. I'm like, are you serious? Wow, welcome to 1997 sexism, y'all. It's been a while. And then unmanageable. I'm just like, Akagi's like, are you serious? And Akagi doesn't lose her cool. Akagi's like, that's what our pilots and technology are for. Like, that's, like, no. And he says, you're not saying that science and the human heart will tame the beast. Which is what she's saying. She's like, are you serious? And she's like, of course I'm serious. Because nerve depends on something as unreliable as the human heart. You've allowed a loss of control such as we've saw. So I love this idea that the human heart is unreliable. That there's always a chance it's going to mess up and it's going to go crazy. But we've established that the human heart has such resolve. And so that's kind of the difference too, is that there is a resolve that can go past what seems like common sense or common knowledge. So we saw in the last episode with Rei and Shinji, the idea of just how strong resolve is and what a difference that it makes. Whereas with the JA unit, it's just robotic and it's inhuman and it doesn't think. So when it goes berserk, it doesn't even go berserk. It just goes awry and does its own thing. But there's nothing human inside of it to stop it or rationalize. It's just like, nope, just gonna do. It's just a blank slate, just going and moving, this walking nuclear reactor. And that's what Akagi's like, no, you need to have something human that has free will enough to be able to manually shut something down if needed. And he's like, no. He's like, that seems like a liability. And then he says that's why the UN had to approve that colossal supplementary budget. So then they're all going to tie it back. Like the logistics of humanity versus robotics and automation. Yeah, that's a topic, but we're going to throw that over to the side here and talk about the budget and the economy, right? That's what he gets back to. He's like, the UN had to give you this huge supplementary budget. Which is funny because he says colossal budget, and they said back in the debriefing they had such a limited budget. So NERV doesn't view it as nearly enough to do what they want, and the rest of the country is like, it was humongous. Like, so that contrast, it's interesting. As a result, 20,000 people in several countries are starving. Which, at the beginning, 20,000 is a lot. 20,000 is a lot. I'm not saying it's not. But it's such a funny term because when we think of, in our modern day, in the reality, we hear 20,000, you're like, oh, that's a lot. But usually we're used to like millions. Well, because of the second impact, half of the population's been wiped out. So 20,000 is a big deal, right? It's a much bigger deal than what we, in our current reality, would think, right? And from several countries are starving because we have several countries working on these units. So they're pouring money into the EVA units in several countries, and it's causing resources that would be feeding the people to get stripped away. So Interesting. On top of which, regardless of it having been such a critical incident, the causes of it are still unknown. I wish you would at least fulfill that much of your responsibilities. So he just lets her have it. He's like, you guys aren't telling us everything. We still don't know a lot about the angels. We don't know why this is happening. Why don't you do your job? And it's like, ugh. And we've seen from our end just how hard that job is. And it's like, well, and these guys are about to figure that out too. And just Akagi, I envy you. Nerve is protected by a super legal act that allows you to avoid responsibility. So the law, we established up here that the government is pursuing legal action, but it's going to be blocked. So again, that ties to the fact that Nerve right now is protected. And he says it keeps him from having to claim any responsibility. Because he's like, yeah, the law keeps you guys afloat, and you don't have to take responsibility for all the destruction that's being caused. Interesting. And I just like that Akagi, she got the hand on her hip. She's like, I am frustrated, but I'm going to keep my cool. It's fine. Like, Akagi handles it like a pro. She does. It doesn't matter what you say. The fact is that only Nerve's weapons have the ability to defeat the enemy. And he says, you mean the AT field? It's just a matter of time as well. And this part here, Nerve's day in the sun will not last forever. So the information about the AT field has been leaked to them. And it's like, but okay, again, obligatory Attack on Titan spoiler for season 4. I just have to bring it out. The moment he said this about the Nerve's day in the sun will not last forever, I was like, oh wow, it's kind of like Marley and the Warriors. It's just like Marley and the Warriors, where the government's like, the age of the Titans is coming to an end. The age of the Evas, being the sole protectors of Earth, are coming to an end. So it's funny, it's like this whole situation is kind of like with Marley. They were depending on the Warriors to protect their country from the Titans, and the Titans are like the angels. I guess the Titans are like the angels in this sense, and the Warriors are like the Eva units. And so, which is funny. But when he says that the age, Nerve's days in the sun will not last forever, it seems like a direct reference to Marley. Like their time, the age of the Titan shifters is coming to an end as well. Everyone else is catching up. So just fun times, right? Fun connections, right? That's all. But enough spoilers. We're done. So yeah, but Akagi is just like, what do I say? And Masato's like, And then back, I love that they have like the JA, the sample tape, everything. They have, again, the cups that they're drinking out of have the lipstick stains, animation, top notch, consistency, and just idiots. Who do those fat cats think they are? Masato's just beating the shit out of this locker. Locker number 5. Locker number 5. I'm curious if that's any significance. I feel like everything's significant in this story. Everything. Even the locker that she's beaten up. But yeah, this is just payback for getting out of the profit loop. So, okay. So basically the Japanese oil industry, the chemical industry that was established to be the sponsors of this party that are funding the JA unit, Misato's saying that at some point in time, they were cut out of the profit loop from the EVA units. And that's why they're pissed off. And that's why they made this whole JA to compete with them, is because they were cut out of the profit system. Okay. But I like how Misato keeps it together during the meeting. And then she just gets mad and just waylays on that locker and says how pissed she is. And I like that Akagi's like, stop that. It makes you look childish. So it's funny, there's that contrast where Misato was like, you need to stop speaking out in front of this guy because you just look childish, because he's just going to bring it back at you. He can't be reasoned with. And then Akagi tells her, like, you should stop just beating up shit because you look childish. It's interesting. But as she says this, she's just the jet alone. That's what JA stands for, jet alone. As she says this, he's just a show-off begging for praise. She's like, just ignited the jet alone sample material. I love that she's like, it makes you look childish as she's burning this sample material. It's hilarious. It's like, oh my God, of course. It's great. But yeah. And she's like, he's a small man. Oh my God. Akagi is dangerous because Akagi kept it together and was professional. And then behind closed doors, she's like burning his manuscript and talking about how he's a small man. I'm like, I would not mess with Akagi. I would not. Would not mess with her. And then Masato's like, how did he even know about the AT field? and she says there's been a huge leak of classified information. And she's like, what the hell is intelligence doing? That makes me think that Misato doesn't know what's going on. So there's this question of how much does Misato know in all of this? I don't think it's much. I think Misato is intentionally, because Misato has a good heart. I feel like with Shinji, Misato's doing her job in guarding over Shinji, but I feel like she has a good heart and good intentions. And in the end, she's very much a wears her heart on her sleeve type of person, Misato is. She's good at projecting herself in certain situations. But at the end of the day, she is very genuine, at least around Shinji and everything, and around the people that she's close with. And so I feel like Misato does not know what's going on, but Akagi does. Like when she says, what the hell is intelligence doing? Akagi doesn't tell her, but Akagi's like, no, this information was leaked on purpose because we're meaning for there to be an accident. It's interesting. So yeah, we cut to the inside unit. I was wondering what the green and the circles were, but it's the inside of the jet alone engine, and it's showing that everything's operational. Again, it's color symbolism. It cuts from Akagi to everything going fine with the green, and then it cuts to red, like something's about to mess up. And there's all of this jargon on here, copyright 2014, 2015, like the system boot. So, okay, I wanted to go back and look at this real quick. I want to look back at this. The everything's green. Okay, and I want to cut. Okay, so the system here, it goes from green to red, and it says status analyzer check. Slave, okay. Virus protection, check. Green, okay. All right. And then there's like Mosaic, small drive, Atom 8B configure. Oh, there's the atom that's thrown in there. Okay, Atom 8B. I feel like there's just like little tiny things in here that are being thrown in. Okay, like something's messing it up. The JA high system boot. Atom 8B. Okay. Ooh, something's up. All right. Handle. Okay. And then something was deleted. They deleted the password code. Okay, that it was tampered with. Oh my God. Okay. Sure thing. And it looks weird. It looks goofy. The JA unit looks goofy. It just, with its little head and its little arms. And I think that's intentional. It looks like a robot. It just looks like what you consider, like the EVA units themselves look very organic. And I like how everybody raises their binoculars up. They raise their binoculars up all at the same time in sync. And they're like, open all power circuits. And Akagi knows it's going to mess up, but we don't know. Because Akagi is very casual. She's just sipping her coffee. And Misato has her arms crossed like, I don't like this. But Akagi knows what's going to happen. But again, it just looks very robotic. Like the EVA units don't look like mechs. They look too organic. But this thing looks like a mech, right? It looks like something you'd see in a regular anime. And so they go through all of the things, the control rods, the reactor has exceeded threshold levels, output's nominal, and they do the walk cycle. And I like them, so I was like, oh, look, they made it walk. Isn't that cute? And they're operating it from a control tower, right? So it's all automated. Yep. Oh my God, this is great. And that guy's like so happy. He's like, oh, it's working. Yay. And Nakagi's like, yeah, it's about to all mess up. Because here's the thing. Misato has her binoculars out too. Misato doesn't know what's going on. She has her binoculars out and she's like, oh, look, it actually walks. I guess they do have something to be proud of. Akagi doesn't need to see that it's going to walk because she knows it's going to mess up. She's sitting there drinking her coffee. And Akagi's just looking off like, yeah, it's great for now. God, when you go back and rewatch this, knowing it's like, oh, Akagi knows a lot more. Akagi is way more in the loop than she lets on. And Misato is much more out of the loop than I originally thought. I thought Misato was much more in on this. Misato is just as much of a pawn as Shinji is. Yeah. And the pressure inside the reactor is increasing. Yeah, so everything's going awry, right? And so they, again, no effect. They try to stop it and it just decides, and it just steps, and they say emergency power, shut it off, and they can't, it's not accepting the abort command. And then I love that it steps into the control room and leaves this giant footprint-sized, like, hole in its wake. Oh my god, yeah. It's great. And leaves that footprint ship. Yeah, just gets on the thing. And Misato's like, oh my gosh! And like, she peeks out there like, what? She's like looking around being like, the robot is as badly behaved as the guy who built it. Mm-hmm. Nice. But yeah, the compressor valve is, everything's not working with it. And there's going to be a nuclear meltdown. It is a walking nuclear reactor that's about to melt down and explode. Uh-huh. And Akagi's like, yeah, about that. So I want to see exactly what happened after this. And Misato's like, the fact is, the danger of a meltdown is now before. So Misato takes action. Misato's like, no, there's about to be a meltdown. And under the circumstances, our only option is to wait for it to stop. But they just established that it can move for 150 days. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And they're like, what's the probability of an automatic stop? And he says it would be 0.00002, a miracle. And she's just like, well, determined efforts are better than waiting for a miracle. So I like Misato's like, rather than just sit on our asses and wait for this to happen, let's do something. Like we got better odds than just sitting here. Right? Tell me how to stop that thing. And I love this framing. The framing of him up in the control tower looking down at Misato, and there's all the rubble and debris in between them. The framing of that shot is so good. Yes. He's like, we've tried every possible option. She's like, no, there has to be a last resort to wipe everything out. There has to be. She's like, give me the password. This part's amazing. This part about the password is absolutely, it is satire, it is dark humor, it is genius. The password to delete all the programming is top secret. And she's like, well, that's great. We need that now. God, I love this. He's like, it is top secret. I can't authorize it. And she's like, I'm not allowed to tell you. And she's like, well, then get the clearance. She's like, this walking nuclear reactor is probably going to walk into a populated, to a civilization, to a populated area. Get the clearance to turn it off. Do your job right now. And he calls the line, and they're like, let me speak to Mr. Manda in Tokyo too, the director of internal affairs. And they're like, I've delegated this to Yasugi. Ask him. So we cut to the office. The office guy's like, I'm not taking care of this anymore. I gave the launch code to this guy over here. I'll direct you to him. Like, just passing the buck on to someone else. And then it cuts to a golf course. And this guy's like, I can't give authorizations for this over the phone. Like, no. And he says, can you submit a formal written request? This potential nuclear bomb is about to blow up in Japan and possibly wipe out a huge part of the population. And the only way to possibly stop it is to use this password. And to get clearance for it, they pass it off to a guy playing golf. And the golf guy's like, I can't do this over the phone. There's guys here. Just send me a letter request and I'll get to it in 1 to 3 business days. And I feel like it's such a commentary about just how messed up it is that when there's situations about life and death of human beings, the upper government and administration is just like, they handle it in like such a clinical and just non-human way. It's just, God, it's weird. So I just need to get Mr. Yoshizawa's permission. And Misato's like, he's like, yes, I've already gotten approval from Mr. Witz. And I love that she says here, she says it is just the evasion of responsibility. It is just them passing off responsibility to someone else instead of taking it for themselves. And that ties directly to Misato's character, where she's like, no, I'm taking control of this. I'm going to handle it. I'll do it. Fine. If you guys are going to be weird about this, I'll take charge. And he's like, a written order of clearance will be sent. That will make this an official operation. She's like, we can't wait for that. Like, are you serious? This is a life or death situation. And it just keeps moving. Jet alone is headed for Atsugi. And she's like, time is running out. From here, I'll be acting independently. And he's just like, she's like, excuse me. And she's like, hey, Hyuga, I've arranged it with Atsugi, so bring Shinji and Unit 1 equipped for F module. Okay. Again, y'all said there had to be fan service. I'm like, we couldn't go an episode without fan service. I'm glad Misato decided to wear a slip underneath her dress rather than going full, bare bones like she has previously. And I like the Kagi's like, this is an emergency. And so here's the thing. I'm very curious because Akagi says this is pointless. Call it off. Like, I think that it was fully intended for this thing to have a meltdown, right? It was either intended for it to have a meltdown and for it to blow something up and cause some severe damage, and that would get the government to be like, okay, never mind, this was a bad idea, let's stick with the EVA units, okay? Or they have the ability to overwrite the system, and they were going to overwrite it at the last second and prevent the meltdown. One of those two. But the thing is, Akagi can't tell Misato that because Misato's a pawn in all this. She can't reveal the plan and what she knows because that's part of her job. So she just casually tries to talk her out of it. Besides, how do you plan to stop it? And she's like, well, I'll input the direct command manually. She's like, I'll just do the password myself. And she's like, are you serious? And she's like, yes. And he says, but there's radioactivity. And she's like, well, what else am I going to do, right? It's too risky. And she's like, if I make it, everyone will be saved. And as she says that, they break the hatchet. I love that just like that cuts through the moment, right? You can enter through the backpack. Like, I love that they're doing this. And then he says the password is hope. The password to delete the programming is hope. And she's like, thanks. And she's like, thanks. I'm like, really, hope? That was your password? That was it? No letters, no numbers, no uppercase, case sensitive. In this modern day and time, case sensitivity is a big thing, but it was just hope, really? Might as well have made it 1, 2, 3, 4. But I love this debriefing with her and Shinji, though. Her and Shinji, JA is the target. There's a danger of meltdown in 5 minutes. We cannot allow it to get any closer to a populated area. I love it. She's like, Hyuga. Hyuga is this guy. I love him. Hyuga. He seems really cute. I like it. She's like, break away and ascend to a safe altitude, just in case things go awry. He's like, Roger. She's like, Shinji, you run alongside the target and place me out. So she goes to the plan with him. And then he's like, wait, what are you going to do? And he's like, you're going inside of it? And it's like, come on, Shinji, what'd you think she was going to do? He's like, that's crazy. She's like, there just isn't any other way. And I love how she's so calm here. She's like, it's okay. This is what I've got to do. And Shinji's like, it's too dangerous. I love it. And she's like, don't worry. If it comes down to it, the EVA can withstand a direct explosion. And he's like, no, I don't care about myself. I meant for you. Like, I love how compassionate Shinji gets in this moment. He's like, no, you miss Misato. Like, you're the one in danger. And she's like, I've got to give it my best shot, or I'll regret it the rest of my life. I love that. I love that she's like, no, Shinji. She's like, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. So it'll be okay. I love how calm she is in this moment. She's like, no, it's fine. She's like, I know I can do this. And she's being calm for him. But again, she's such a hot mess. But when she's in the moment doing this, she's competent and she knows what to do. And I love that Shinji's just like, I don't want to lose you. It's like, it's so sweet. And he's like, okay. And you can tell, and he's like, there's the target. And you can tell how Shinji's just so determined. I love it, just walking by itself with the shadow. He's like, here we go. I love it. So the EVA unit can withstand a nuclear blast. Funny they would know that. Funny they would know that. From experience? Possibly 15 years ago? Who knows? Who knows? Yep. But the EVA unit goes down there to face it. And I love that it's just the EVA units are so organic in how they move. It just shows how organic it is moving. And he's got Misato in his hand as he's running. But then it's funny that you see all the limbs moving on the EVA unit. And then there's the JA thing. He's like, we got less than 4 minutes. Put me on now. And it's very realistic. He grabs a hold of it and holds the unit there for her to get on there. But she slips. Again, she's like, just do it. I love that sign that she gets on there, but she slips and grabs a hold of the ladder thing there, right? It's very realistic. Like she has to climb her way back up. And he's like, oh my God. And he's like, be careful. I love that she's like, it's okay. And it's funny that the way to go inside of it is the same way that the entry plug works in the Eva. Funny that. This looks bad and it's too hot. And he's like, stop, you bastard. And Shinji holding it back. And he tries to like block all the steam and stuff from getting out. And so, meanwhile, she calmly and coolly goes to the auxiliary room. This part floored me when we find out that the password doesn't work. That the password has been tampered with. The password. And it doesn't work. Oh my God, the error that it was deleted. That just, my heart like stopped. I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh, the program was altered. And so then she decides to manually push it back in herself because that's all she knows how to do. At this point, she's like, it's just 0.2 short of critical. Oh my God. And all she can do, sink or swim. She's like, I'm here now. I don't have enough time to get out and withstand the blast anyway. I'm going to die regardless. So I've just got to try to push the rods in manually. Oh my God. And Shinji getting so worried. Shinji being like, get out of there. Like, it's so, like, Shinji just getting so concerned, like, about to cry. Like, it's, ugh. And she starts to move it on her own. Oh my God. And Shinji being like, Miss Misato. Oh. But she does it. She manages. Now, whether or not she did it or it was programmed by somebody else, whether or not, that's the thing. Okay. But then it operates back up. See, that's the thing. Somebody saved it at the last minute, right? Somebody fixed it. Looking back on it now, it seemed like the programming fixed itself at the last second. So I'm thinking Gendo or somebody in the intelligence that was tampering with it fixed it the last second to save her. And it just happened to coincide with her trying to do it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Misato did make it work, but it all seems so coincidental that at the last second it works. Okay. And he's like, oh, she's fine. And everything, she made it. And again, everybody is cheering, but Akagi is standing there being like, that idiot. Like, she could have killed herself and it wasn't even necessary. That's the thing. It wasn't necessary because they were going to be fine regardless. And he's like, Miss Misato, are you all right? And she's like, I feel like crap. Like, yep. I just, strained myself. And he's like, you're alive. Thank goodness. Really, thank goodness. It really was a miracle. I'm so impressed. Oh, and he's just so excited that she's okay. And she's like, yes, it was a miracle, but the miracle was set up by someone. Yeah, so Misato knows. So that's the thing. Misato, I don't like this. Misato is onto something. I don't get good vibes from this at all with her or Shinji, because Shinji is questioning about the Eva. He says something's up. What's with the Eva? I don't know anything. I need to learn something. Misato seems like she was in the dark, but now she knows something's up, and she's like, what's going on? And so she knows something's up. So what's happening there? It was set up. I don't like this because Misato and Shinji are being played as pawns, and I'm like, I don't like the idea of them learning too much, right? And Akagi and them are keeping things from them, so I'm getting bad vibes. Yep. The recovery unit 1 is complete. And now there's multiple people there. No danger of radioactive contamination. And it's Gendo and her. Except for Captain Kutsuragi's actions, everything else went according to plan. And he's like, good work. And we don't see his eyes. So yeah, Misato was not meant to get involved, but she did. And now things are getting interesting. So yeah, we go back to the third breakfast. And everything's back to normal. Eating the same old thing. Routine, as always. And then she comes back in. Good morning. Cracks the beer. Acts like it's nothing. Saving the world, no big deal. Nuclear reactor, possible death, just another day on the job. Everything is back to normal. Everything's back to the normal routine. And then, but I like that Shinji is just, he was disappointed and now he's just frustrated. He's like, you nearly died yesterday. What are we doing? And she's like, time for a morning shower. And she's like, where's everything? Like, she acts like it's nothing. And Shinji's onto her act, right? Shinji is frustrated at her. He's irritated at her because he's like, you nearly died yesterday. Don't treat this like it's nothing. And so then I love that they're like, oh, good morning, Shinji. And he's like, good morning. He's like, I'm taking off. He's mad at her. And she's like, bye. And everything's fixed now. Okay. 40-40. Everything is repaired. Interesting. Funny that. So, yeah, everything's back to normal. And isn't that funny? And they're like, Miss Misato is so cool. And Shinji's like, no. He's like, I thought so too. But at home, she's shameless, coarse, uncool, and really sloppy. I love it. And he's like, it makes me embarrassed for her. And they're like, how nice for you. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, you really are a kid. You don't get it, do you? And he's like, he sure is. And Shinji's like, what's that supposed to mean? And they're like, she lets you see a side of her that she won't show to anyone else. And they're like, you silly kid. That means she's your family. So yeah, Shinji realizes in this moment that Misato is comfortable around him. Right? And so his frustration at her is because she's not what she projects to everyone else, but Ida and Toji are like, no, don't you get it? That she's your family. She can show that side to you because that's what family does. It's like, any family can look great on the surface, like out in public, but then when you get, every family has some form of dysfunction in some way, shape, or form. And so but you don't see that dysfunction unless you're part of that family and you interact with them on a day-to-day basis. And so Toji and Ida are like, no, she's your family. That's why you get to see that side of her. Be like, you get to see the side that no one else does because she thinks that you're that close to her and she views you like that. And it's so cute where Shinji, he has that little smile on his face. He's like, you mean I have a family? I'm like, oh my God, Shinji. Yes, you have a family. It's so damn cute. I'm like, yeah, you got a family, Shinji. Aw. And it's just like, okay. That little moment that, yeah, Shinji, you got a family. And that's all, it seems like that's all he's wanted is to feel wanted. And he has that with Misato. So now I'm worried for Misato. I'm so worried now. Because I was like, no, Misato's onto something. But Akagi and them don't want Misato to know things. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't get good vibes. I don't get good vibes. And Shinji now has a family. I don't get good vibes. This was probably my favorite episode so far. I loved this episode. The character development, the emotions, the action, the mystery is building. There's stuff going on beneath the surface that we're just getting little crumbs of. The relationships. This was absolutely wonderful. I loved this episode so much. And I'm glad y'all haven't spoiled me. This is, yep. I'm please keep not spoiling me. Because this is really good. But, oh my gosh, I've talked for an hour and 40 minutes. This is the longest reaction yet. But yeah, good times. So yeah, I another a standalone episode, but I really liked it. It was really good. And we got to hear Misato. I think that's Misato, her voice actress, singing at the end there. So, But I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. This episode was wonderful. I'm lots of curious things set up. And now we get to see, now that we're in stage 2 of the story, if things are going to start getting explained. So we shall see. But in any case, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll talk to you next week with more Neon Genesis Evangelion.